Hi, everybody. Hi, thank you for joining. Take a second. We're going to let people filter in. I know it takes folks usually a minute to find themselves. Get a glass of water, wine, beer. We will not judge. It's Friday. It's almost the weekend. Get comfy. We're just going to take a couple minutes here, give you guys a couple tips and tricks, and then we'll get started. Thanks for spending your weekend with us. For those of you whose first time it is, welcome. I'm Claire. I'm the Director of Marketing at Atlantic. I'm joined by a couple of extraordinary folks here that I'll let Annie, my colleague, introduce. This is Live with Atlantic, Writers Reflect. We're going to be together for about 1 hour. So the first 45 minutes or so are going to be a conversation between Eboni and Josh. And if you have questions along the way that you'd like to ask either of them, feel free to use the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. You could also use the Q&A button if for any reason you encounter any technical difficulties. Those of us who are monitoring the back end of this can try to help you troubleshoot if you do. And we're just really glad that you've spent this time with us. It's a strange time, and being able to be in community with all of you means a lot. So I'll let Annie take it from here, and then I'll pop in at the very end. Thanks, guys.
Hi, Claire. Thanks, Claire. Hi, I'm Annie McCrae. I'm the Associate Artistic Director at Atlantic. And we're so thrilled to have you all here for Live with Atlantic and another Writers Reflect. So we are really thrilled to have our good friends Joshua Harmon and Eboni Booth here. Eboni had her acting debut, believe it or not, at Atlantic. And then we were so lucky to have her also have her playwriting debut at Atlantic for with Paris, which was her beautiful play that we were lucky to have the world premiere of this past winter. And we're delighted to have her here. And then Joshua Harmon, we've admired his writing for a really long time, and we are excited to work with him on The Bedwetter, which is our upcoming musical for which he wrote the book. And I'm going to turn things over in just a minute to Josh and Eboni for their chat. But before I do, I just wanted to say that we are working really hard to get back together in the place we all want to be, which is back to live performances. But in these intervening months until we can do that again, we're relying on the generosity of donations. So if you've enjoyed these Live with Atlantic chats and have fun today, we hope you will consider making a donation to Atlantic. And really, any amount makes a difference. And we would be so grateful. So with that, I will turn it over to Eboni and Josh and have so much fun. I'll see you at the end.
Bye.
Have a good chat. Bye, you guys.
Hi.
Josh, how are you?
Okay.
I know.
How are you?
I'm hanging in there. I feel like, well, maybe I should ask, where are you? Because we were talking right before we started about how both of us are in slightly different locations, and that is having some bearing on our state right now.
Yeah, the weathered shingles behind you are like, oh, she's not in New York, maybe. Yeah, I'm at Williamstown for the week, and it is great. Yeah. It's been great. It's like a little writer's retreat for the week, and so I'm just enjoying that. And you're on Cape Cod?
I am. I'm out visiting. My boyfriend's parents are out here on Cape Cod. So we got here a few days ago, and we're going to be here for a few more days. And this was my first time leaving the city in sort of a substantial way. And it's like one of those things I kind of hadn't realized how just sort of how out of it and despondent I was until I got out of New York, and I started to I haven't been around this many people. I haven't been outside this much. I just hadn't had a strong sense of how I can't complain. I really can't complain right now.
Are you near an ocean?
Quite fortunate. We're close enough to an ocean. Yeah, I'm like a 10-minute drive from an ocean. So I've gone to the beach,
Come on.
It's really nice. It's really nice. I feel so anxious and tired and sort of out of it all the time. And I still do here, but it's very different. It's very different than in my apartment in Brooklyn.
Yeah, 2020 has been a delight, hasn't it? Although I have to say, I mean, it is bizarre to say this to you in the middle of a pandemic.
Please.
But you've been killing 2020. It's been debut play in New York,
Yeah.
graduated Juilliard,
Yeah.
got into New Dramatists. Like,
Oh,
I feel
gosh,
crazy
yeah.
saying this, but congratulations on your
Thank you.
2020.
Thank you so much. It feels, I mean, I don't know. I don't know how you've been feeling. I feel like this time has me really reflecting on my good fortune, even, and sort of, I'm really nervous right now. I have to say, I actually feel like, my background is in acting. And one of the things I was really not great at was auditioning. It was really hard. It took a while for me to get to be a better auditioner. And there would just be times, and I feel that way right now, where I would just like walk into an audition room and try to, my mouth would be tense, my upper lip is shaking. Everyone's trying to be friendly, like, how are you? Do you have any questions? And I'm just like totally tense inside. And I feel like that. I feel like that a little bit now. Like, I don't want to say the
My mom
wrong
and
thing.
dad are watching right now. My mom and dad are watching right now. They're loving everything we're saying. So the audience is with us.
They're
can
live
feel
texting.
it.
They're live texting.
I'll check. Yeah.
Josh, no, I feel so grateful. I feel like my play at the Atlantic went up, and we ended about, I want to say 3 weeks to a month before things in New York had to start closing down. And I mean, I couldn't be more grateful. It's been so sad. There have been so many horrible things for people to contend with. And one of them, in terms of our community, has been how many people's, had either truncated experiences or experiences that didn't get off the ground, and I know obviously you understand more than most. It's hard.
Can we talk about Paris for a second though?
Yeah, of course.
Because I loved that play so much, and knowing that we were going to meet today, I was like, oh, something actually happened when I saw that play that I don't think I told you, and in the moment it was great, but now that we don't really have theater, it's even greater. So I was at the opening, and I was seated on the end of the aisle next to a stranger, next to a woman I had never seen in my life. And that space is sort of wide. Yeah. And the way Knut directed it, it was like there could be things happening all over the space at times. So like if you're sitting here, you're having, and you're more aware of what's happening right here than you are over there. Yeah. And I think it was Annie McDonough was doing something like hysterical. Like it was so funny. And I started, and because it was right in my area, I was laughing so hard in that way where you're trying to keep it contained because those people are not laughing. And the woman next to me was having the same experience. And this amazing thing happened where I did not know this woman. We're both like laughing in our chairs. And all of a sudden I realized she's grabbed my hand.
Oh gosh.
To like clutch me so that we don't fall over from laughter. It was amazing. And, it was the kind of thing that only happens in a theater where you're like, I've never seen this woman before. I'll probably never see her again. And we shared this like hysterical moment with Anne at your opening. And to me, that is like, when I think about what I'm missing, like that moment at your play does it for me.
Josh, that's so meaningful to me. That means, I don't know, you write something in isolation, and then you send it out into the world, you hope it resonates. There's no guarantee. And some people find things for themselves, other people don't. But, when people you respect and love have something like that to say, it just is really meaningful. And similarly, I find myself, I don't know, I feel like that's the sort of togetherness I'm longing for. And I'm realizing it in bits and fits and starts a little bit about what I miss the most. And I think it's what you're talking about. I think it's that like, coming together in seemingly unobvious ways with people, sometimes who I know well and sometimes who I don't know at all, that feels like it is really nourishing. And I feel sort of starved of that right now.
I agree.
There you are. Okay.
Well,
sorry.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I have an unstable internet situation at Williamstown. No complaints. But that play, what was so amazing about that play to me is that I could have that kind of experience laughing, and then it was so dangerous at times and scary, and then so moving. And it was what you want at a play, which is a full meal, you know, and so I was grateful to see the play when I saw it, just regardless, but the fact that it's one of the last things I saw before it all shut down, it's like, oh, I'm glad it wasn't something I hated.
Oh, Josh, I'm so glad. I'm so glad too. I'm so glad too. I think, I don't know, this has struck me definitely before about your work, or just like work I find myself drawn to in general, hopefully being able to like, you know, have that dance with the sorrow and the bliss and the sort of the sweet and the sour. And I don't know, I've been thinking about that a lot these days as I'm sort of like on my own and contemplating, specifically as I start to think about contemplating what comes next or what to write next. Or have you been writing? Have you found yourself able to get some work? No, not at all.
No, and I don't feel bad about it.
Yeah.
To be honest.
Yeah.
I don't, it's really, you know, the most I can think about is like writing, and I'm not a performer, but I was like, I could conceive of a one-man show for myself to do, because that's actually conceivable to put on. But the idea of like writing, you know, some play just feels crazy right now.
It does feel a little crazy right now.
Are you in a similar spot?
I think I am. I think that I think I am. I don't, and and maybe some of it is, you know, trying to figure out how I can be useful in both a micro and a macro way. And I don't know that I have, I don't know that I've been able to dig through some of this anxiety enough to write something that doesn't just feel completely overburdened, or just not an example of a conversation that people need to hear from me or something.
You know, the thing that I've been thinking about a lot, you know, what I don't miss about the theater is like a distillation of the news. You know, like I get the news enough, and it's not why I go to the theater. And I've been thinking a lot about the fact that Glass Menagerie came out in 1944, and you just wrap your head around that. You know, all the guys are over in Europe fighting a war. You know, the gas chambers are spinning. The bombs get dropped in Hiroshima, and New York audiences are grappling with like, is Laura going to kiss the gentleman caller?
Kiss the gentleman caller.
And, you know, you can look at that and sneer, but I actually think like that is what we want when we're in troubling times. It's like, it's not about escapism. It's just something that taps back into the thing that makes you human, you know, and what the theater does best is like, what is it to want and love and hate and rage and, you know, jealousy. And so that's what I'm craving.
That's
and
too.
What I actually, when people are like, you know, is amazing art going to come out of this? I think they imply somehow that like, we're going to respond to the global pandemic. And I don't know about you, but I'm not desperate to go to the theater for that, but I want to see a love story, you know, or that's what
sorry, I don't mean to cut you off.
No.
No, I'm cutting you off because I'm so ardent in my agreement. I mean, I think like, and you know, I don't want to cast aspersions at all. I think people should write what they write, but I think that those sort of, a story like The Glass Menagerie, or stories that seem to be about one thing that's like a sort of individual gesture, or like an individual element. I think what's kind of amazing about them is that they're in conversation with these larger things. So they're about a certain kind of consciousness that hopefully is underscored by things that are on our minds constantly, you know, questions of, you know, loneliness and belonging and inequality. I mean, I think all of those feel quite active in something like The Glass Menagerie, and yet it doesn't feel zeitgeisty. It doesn't feel like, you know, Tennessee Williams was trying to sort of chase a moment and write something that was so steeped in the now. And there's something about that sort of, I don't know, universal lens. I don't mean universal in terms of subject, but I just think in terms of giving yourself permission to sort of dwell in the small and figure out how it might have, I don't know, how it might have implications for how we view larger things. That's sort of like, I'm very curious about that kind of work.
Totally. It's like the reason Hamlet is still captivating to us isn't because of like the distillation of Danish politics and the, you know, it's like, maybe it was really insightful then.
Yeah.
You know, that's not why we're gripped still.
But why are we still gripped? We're still gripped because
It's about growing up. It's about, you know,
power,
acting out and power and, you know, all the things that happen in a moment. You know, history's never so unique. It's like, we've been here before, we'll be here again.
Yeah.
There have been pandemics, you know, there have been uprisings, all sorts of things.
I think it's also like one of the challenges of fiction that kind of feels analogous to the challenges of this moment, which is like being able to extrapolate and find something of yourself in someone else. And there's something about the story, the sort of, you know, when a writer sort of commits to the story and to all the life that could be lived on that stage, I think that that's when you get something that you can't shake when you leave the theater. I mean, and I think that like really amazing writers can light up both sides of the board. So you realize that you're watching something that's quite personal and perhaps anecdotal, but you're also watching something that can speak generationally. And I think when you find that, it's like you're saying, I don't know, those moments sort of like they just like grab you by the scruff of the neck and they really, really won't let go. And you know, I thought a lot actually about, we both studied with Marcia Norman, and I thought a lot about how she encourages people to write and the tools that she can provide and the sort of way she tries to unearth the tools that you already have. And I feel like her wisdom is so useful in this way, because it's like writing about I mean, to borrow her phrase, like your stuff, the stuff that sort of would keep you up at night, the things that you probably actually don't want people to see. And you certainly don't want thousands and thousands of people to see, but actually that's the kind of stuff that makes us feel, it sounds so trite, but it does make us feel so much less lonely. And I think connected in the way that it's really hard for me to feel right now.
Yeah, I'm so happy you brought her up because, so you just finished Juilliard. I left about 5 years ago, graduated, didn't leave.
Was asked to leave, no.
Yeah, and she just retired. It's been, I think she ran the program over 25 years.
Yeah.
And her impact on, I'm assuming you, on me, and on so many writers of now several generations is just giant. But
it's huge.
You know, I feel like I learned two big things from her. One of which was about writing itself and structure, and the other is about self-care and taking care of yourself and protecting yourself. And how, you know, I think when you're a young writer and you're starting out, you have certain amount of fumes that you can burn up, and they do burn out. And so then it's about longevity and how you know, her whole thing is like, your task is to write your body of work.
Yeah.
And how to protect yourself to be able to do that, and how to take care of yourself, and how to ask for the things that you need.
Yeah.
How to advocate for yourself, which is, you know, in a field where, and you know this doubly as an actor and a writer, it's just a lot of rejection. It's a lot of no. And so when somebody says yes, you have this sense of gratitude. And she's very much like, great, you should be grateful and also be clear about what you need to be able to protect yourself, to keep doing the work.
It sounds so obvious, but I find it very hard to actually get people to articulate those things in that way. I mean, I still feel, you know, my instinct is to say yes to what someone asks of me because, you know, like you said, I mean, I've been so used to hearing no, or I think it was Marcia who, I hadn't thought of my sort of energy, and particularly my creative energy, as like a finite resource before Juilliard. I just thought like, you know, I can do as much as I can try to do. And I hadn't thought about, I don't know, I just hadn't thought about having those cranky conversations with myself about what I actually really want, what I would be really useful at. And, you know, I don't just want to sort of get used up by somebody else's agenda. And I think it was
I'm
Marcia.
sending you, oh, sorry.
No, go.
After this, I'm sending you a link to this
Please.
Super Soul chat that Oprah did with Shonda Rhimes that changed my life.
Yeah, tell me.
And in it, Shonda says how her life changed when she learned that no is a complete sentence.
Yeah.
You know, you get asked to do all these things and it's like, okay, fine, or no, but, and she says, no buts. You just say, no, I'm not able to do that for you. She's like, and it just, you know, not everybody reacts well to it, but it just frees you up, you know, to do to do the work you actually want and need to be doing.
But Josh, it's so hard because I had something recently where I was like, I had to say no. And I had, you know, a lot of disclaimers and a lot of caveats. And, you know, I was going back and forth about it. And I was like, why can't you just, you know, I blame the pandemic. I sort of chickened out. I was like, oh, life is so crazy. I'm sorry. I'm really depressed. I can't give you what you want. And that's fine, you know, that's fine. But I think internally, I think what's useful about what you're saying internally, and I think what Marcia says, because Marcia has, you know, she's had a lot of experiences, and I think she's quite candid. I don't think I'm betraying her. She's like had a lot of experiences that have been really thrilling and amazing, and some other experiences that have, you know, left everyone feeling a little bewildered. But I think that, I think she knows how to turn off that people pleasing switch, and I think that for her, the work is paramount. And what I imagine that Oprah and Shonda are advocating for is, I don't know how you feel. I mean, and I don't know how you felt sort of before or after Juilliard. And I certainly don't mean to make a case that you can only get this at school. I think people can encounter it in all different ways, but I didn't know how to take myself seriously as an artist. I hustled as an actor for so long. I was just like always trying to sort of drum up my own work. But as a result, I was in like a very specific mode. And I think Marcia and David both were two who, sort of calm me down and turn the motor down a little bit. And we're like, you know, this is what it might mean to have a long career. And this is what it might mean to not have to beg for love. You know, look, I'm glad to have those qualities. It's why I'm an artist. I'm just like, hey, anyone, like, love me, please. But I think that at a certain point, you have to realize when it's not serving you. And that decision-making stuff and putting it to the side to sort of get back, using the work as a sort of metronome has been invaluable.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's, you know, it's a practice. But like a year and a half ago, I just decided I don't want to do any press anymore. It just makes me unhappy.
Wait, Josh, say more. Say more.
You know, it's not like I get asked to do that much, but a production happens somewhere and they want you to do press and I had winnowed my way down to saying I'll do one piece of press per show. And it was horrible. For me, I would spend the whole week before this interview, whatever the project was, anticipating the questions, practicing my answers so that I tried to sound intelligent. Then they interview you and you can feel yourself saying something you don't want to come out, or, you know, or maybe you're
tense. It's like a bad audition. Even if you kill it, it's a false self.
But then you see the thing 2 weeks later and they've misquoted you, or they've taken something out of context to make it more interesting.
Yeah.
And I was just like, okay, so I've spent a week of labor preparing for this. I hated the experience and I was miserable after. What if I just said no? You know, like, what if I just said I'm taking a break? And it is the gift that keeps on giving. It really is.
It is. And Josh, you know what I realized? This happened to me. I was, you know, I know you feel the same way too. I've worked so hard. I've been trying to break into this field in some ways for almost 20 years. And I'm like, I've worked so hard I don't want to be this miserable. Like, I didn't work for this. I didn't work to have like this much more anxiety or this much more dread. This is not what I want. Like, it's
Can
just
I
like,
ask
it's quite simply, please.
a dumb question?
Please.
I'm sure you get this all the time, but like, as an actor versus as a writer, were you surprised when you moved into a rehearsal room as the writer? Were you prepared, having been on the other side of the table?
No.
For what? No.
Okay. No. Don't believe what they tell you. It's totally different. I mean, well, what was nice was, Josh, I had been in a rehearsal room before, so I had some sense of, you know, I know something about theater. I knew how theater worked. I understood like how a new play development works, the off-Broadway schedule. But the experience of building something as an actor is so different because you come to it, you know, and the writer and, you know, the director hopefully have had a whole relationship with it already, and you're sort of starting anew in a different place. But as a writer, I was wholly unprepared, and I don't know what I could have done to better prepare myself. I think some of it is just the risk of making work. I just think that I didn't
What
feel,
surprised you the most?
I don't want to sound like a politician. You know, I don't want to give a fake answer. I want to be real. What surprised me the most? I was surprised by how, I'm not saying how hard it is having your work live in the lives and mouths and bodies of other people. And that's it. I get now why, as an actor, you know, when I would get off stage and be like, ah, killed it, why the writer would be like, hey, I get it. And I'm not saying anything about my actors. My actors were wonderful. I think it's just the process. I think it's just, it is just the work. And it's an aspect of the work I had really not understood and didn't have the right respect for. I have a really different respect for actors now, having been on this side, because it's hard to have someone who has a very close relationship to the material sitting, you know, 2 feet away from you,
Yeah.
having lots of opinions about what you're doing. It's hard to create in that way. And I felt stifled as an actor at times. And I'd also felt similarly, you know, sort of lost and untethered. So I understand. I understand both sides now.
Yeah, I mean, I think sometimes actors feel a pressure that you as the writer
Absolutely.
have it all mapped out in your
Yeah.
head. And
Yeah.
are they hitting the mark, that are they making the thing you wanted? When, at least for me, I don't have it mapped out at all. I'm learning in that room just as much as they are. And what's doubly painful is that they are counting on me to have answers that I don't always have. And so you just feel like all these talented people are gathered here,
Yeah.
and you are letting them down.
You're letting them, you feel constantly disappointed. But Josh, you know, I blame a lot of that too on other writers, because I've worked with writers as an actor, and I've been a peer of writers, and I hear them talk about their work as if it's like a sort of complete finished text that they understand from beginning to end, and they can sort of, you know, in a granular way and in a more global way, just explain everything. And that's just not been my experience with writing.
No.
It's still, right, like it still feels, I'm like, oh shoot, I don't know that I understand what that means. And, you know, if I were to explain it using my conscious brain, it wouldn't be interesting or creative, and I don't think it would liberate you. But I think there are some writers who can work in a way where they have a lot more answers. Now, that's just not totally, even as an actor, you know, we both really appreciate Daniel Auken, and I think one of the things we love about him is a willingness to say, I don't know, we'll get there, maybe we won't, but I don't know. And that there's something about that permission that feels kind of important to me.
I've done 3 plays with him, and that if I had to distill what I learned from him in just 3 words, it's I don't know. And I think it takes somebody of tremendous confidence to be able to say that, because I think especially directors are in a position where they're expected to have the answers and to know things and to make decisions. So to be somebody to say that, you know.
I feel, Josh, really encouraged by that. I get really nervous with directors and writers both. First of all, I don't ask a lot of questions initially, but if I did have a question where they have all, you know, they're like, oh, well, it's because the uncle did this, and then back in 1972, you know, where they sort of have the answers at their disposal, it makes me feel like there's some overcompensation of sorts. Maybe that's not true. That's just my paranoia and suspicion.
No, I completely agree with you.
But I do feel like because I feel like I don't know often is equated with a certain kind of incompetence. And I tend to feel like the exact opposite is true, that the most capable, able people are ones who can sort of admit a blind spot. And, you know, the actors we worked with on Paris felt similarly engaged by that mystery. And so that
They
was why
were
I was
so good.
They were so wonderful, and Canood was so great. And we all sort of like, you know, scrambled around in the dark for a really long time. And I think that searching is really painful. And so I think answers make you feel like you have more control. And so I understand the impulse to ask the question and to try to provide an answer. But I don't know, Josh, I like staying, this sounds so stupid. It sounds like something, I like staying in the dark for as long as you can until I don't know.
I
I think I do.
know what you're
Yeah.
talking about. I mean, there's an aspect of it that is thought through, and then there's an aspect that's totally mysterious. And to pretend to have answers about something that's often quite mysterious feels absurd.
I think that's the thing. And I think that that's where work, and it's such a shame we don't have more time to work before we have to get in front of other people. But I think the marriage of craft, you know, with an ability to sort of follow unconscious impulses, because I had an acting teacher who was always like, you know, nothing creative happens in your conscious mind. Like you're going to use your conscious mind for other things, but to allow yourself to sort of be carried away by something or sort of filled up by something, I think is it's beautiful and grotesque at the same time. I have a lot of appreciation for it, and I sort of stand in wonder of it. But I also know that in addition to that elation, there's a lot of pain and shame and embarrassment. So I get the impulse to sort of keep it safe and keep it known and keep it at a very explainable level.
How did you like the preview and audience process of allowing
Stop asking me these questions.
We got time.
Josh, okay, I'm going to answer, but then I want you to answer because you've done it more than me, and I feel like your answer is going to be. Wait, first of all, I cut you off. Go ahead, finish answer it.
That was it. I want to know. I want to know if what it was like, because I think that is, you know, you're in the room and you're having, you know, in rehearsal, and you're having whatever kind of experience you're having, and then all of a sudden 60 or 90 or 400 strangers show up, and you just think, what have I done?
What the fuck have I done? I know dress rehearsal had me, poor Canoed, like poor everybody, because I was like a lot to deal with. And I'm a crier. So I was like crying about everything. And I was so ashamed. And if I'm being honest, I felt really hard because I felt like I actually couldn't be there for the actors because I was having my own experience. That what they were doing was lovely and they were making the play, but I was having the experience of putting work on a stage in front of people was really, really hard. I really didn't understand that. And it was hard when the audiences were loving and supportive, and it was hard when the audiences were less willing to take the ride. And the balm for that was just knowing that this is it. This is what I worked so hard for. So this is a kind of discomfort that I will endure, you know, because this is part of the work. And I think that feeling of being very naked and very vulnerable is okay. It's just, Canoed was wonderful. The Atlantic was wonderful. And what helped was my community. I really underestimated how good it would feel to find people, even people I didn't know very well, who were so loving, who knew how absolutely out of my mind psycho I was on the second preview, who were so supportive, who had no reason to be as loving and supportive as they were. And that's what I think about. That's what I think about when I worry that, oh shit, excuse me, oh Lord, I fail the actors. How could I have been more available to them? That's something that's been on my mind a lot. I think about,
that's the people pleaser.
That's the people pleaser. I know, Sean, I know, but yeah, okay, fair enough. No, it really is, but
No, but that's not why you're there. You're not there to, I mean,
Right.
I love my actors, but you're not there to babysit and cheerlead them. I mean, you want them to
Right.
feel good, but you're also there to make the play better.
You're there to
know?
make the play. And I think that and as an actor in previews, it's a very different thing. Previews are hard, but it is a different thing. And and to be frank, you're doing something. I'm on stage acting. As a writer, you're sitting at the back of a house watching the faces of all those people, trying not to watch the faces of all those people, drinking wine. I drank Trader Joe's wine through every performance, and saying like, why on earth? Wait, why did I do that? Why did I write that? Why did I put that part in? Obviously, that's me. I hate, going through all of that stuff. Mm-hmm. Josh, is it still like that for you?
Yeah. Yeah, it is the most painful thing I know. And, it's always funny because I feel like I've had actors say to me in previews, like, are you just like so happy? And you're like, you have to somehow convey like, your performance is amazing. And I am as unhappy as I've ever been in my life.
But Josh, that's the thing. And that's why it's this mysterious thing, because my feelings, I mean, it's my narcissism, it's my own stuff, but my feelings very often, it wasn't like I'm sad because I feel like I don't like what I saw in there. It's not that. It's not, I think it's something in the exposure and the building that's the birthing that's just painful. It's not about them at all.
No, it's about, it's vulnerable. It's so vulnerable.
It's so vulnerable.
You know, I keep thinking about like a painter does not go to the museum and stand behind all the people looking at it who are like, I don't like it. You know, it's such a bizarre art form that you have to stand behind people coming to evaluate and judge it. And by default, there are people who are going to be changed forever by it and people who are going to want it to burn to the ground.
To burn to the ground. But now, Josh, how do you let that be true and not affect how you write moving forward? Like, you know, after Bad Jews, what was your play after Bad Jews?
Significant Other.
It was Significant Other. So, yeah. I mean, I don't know how far in advance you write, but you know, when you're sitting down to write again, how do you not do it from a sort of defensive crouch? Like, okay, I won't write something that's boring. I won't write something that makes people fall asleep in act 2. I won't write something, you know, how do you sort of keep your mettle and work and get rid of some of those voices?
I think for me, I have to pretend I'm a very selfish writer. Like I really do just write for myself.
Yeah.
And so I have to somehow trick myself that it's just for me and I never have to show it to anyone, even if it's a commission. Like, it's like, I can throw this away. Like, this is just mine.
Yeah.
And I'm only going to write the thing that's interesting to me and then push it. And then you start to hear it, you know, when you have a reading or whatever, and you're like, oh, that was mine. That's not for you.
Yeah. Yeah,
you have to play games with yourself.
I think you have to play those weird games with yourself. It's funny too, because I was talking about it with an actor, because I knew an actor who I know a lot of actors who don't read reviews. I know some actors who do. And this one actor I knew who read reviews was like, you just have to have, you have to have a little bit of moxie. You need to have some, you know, she was like, you can't just be deflating all the time that, you know, you hear something that's a little difficult to take in. But this idea that, I don't know what I'm saying. This idea that in the creation mode, that the creation mode is a different mode than sending it out into the world. And I think where I'm still struggling is still trying to be very much a Libra people pleaser. Even when I'm in creation mode, I'm still remembering that woman in the elevator going upstairs who was like boring, long and boring. And I was like, okay, how do I head off that woman? And of course you can't. And I think one thing I realized about collaborators, I mean, Knut is, he's many things, but he's so rigorous and he's really honest about saying to me, you know, when I'm striking those false notes and when he feels like I'm not writing from the right place, or my agenda is getting a little murky, and when I'm trying to like make people love me and be dazzling, and you know, I feel really grateful to have someone like that as a collaborator. Oh no, Josh, I think, oh, there you go. Okay.
I mean, you know, on the flip, okay, sorry.
No, there you go.
You know, on the flip side, okay, we're good? Okay.
We're good. Okay, now we're good.
It is painful, but it's also, now you can see me?
No.
All right. Sorry, Williams. No. It's painful, but it's also when I feel the most alive. Like, it's like I don't know if you've ever been life, but where you just feel more than normal and it's not sustainable. Like you can't live in that space forever.
Yeah.
But I think of people who go to like a 9-to-5 office job, they don't have that experience of that kind of, you know, vibration of just walking down the street for a month and a half with terror and fear and anxiety. And I'm making it sound horrible, and it is, but it's also like you just feel very vulnerable in a way that reminds you of life. That's the best way I can put it.
I think so too. And I think, you know, I wonder what the analogs are for people who don't work in the performing arts anyway. You know, I'm curious about if people who work jobs at a desk, for example, or just different kinds of jobs, what their version of that is, because I think that to me, that makes it worth it. I mean, I understand, you know, it's a value I feel like I try to have as an actor, which is like, you know, I'm willingly hoping to take journeys that most people will avoid in their normal lives. And there's a benefit to that. I don't know what it is. I don't know. I have to say, working on Paris was very, very stressful. It was very exhilarating, but it was really stressful. And yet at the same time, I had a heightened sense of just awareness and aliveness that I don't have during normal time. You know, it's like grieving, you know, when I've lost somebody. Listen, this is not I'm not trying to make myself sound like a victim of grief. I mean, listen, Paris is my dream. That's my dream job. So like, I'm so lucky to be able to do that. But one thing I will say is like, so let's assume that that's a given. But I know that in times when I've been mourning, as time goes on and I settle into a new world order without the person, there is a part of that pain that I miss, that there's a part of my awareness of being alive, my proximity to the edge, the way I don't take things for granted, the way I understand other people and the importance of connection and stuff. That just, you know, it just gets dulled down when I'm happy and fed and full of martinis and, you know.
Yeah, that's not when you're writing a new play, you know?
That's not what I'm writing.
No, it's when you're sad.
Yeah, or it's when you give yourself the permission. And it's funny because, you know, by that logic, maybe we should be writing now. And yet, the permission, you know, when you give yourself the permission to sort of do that deep diving. And I think that deep diving, at least in the way that I understand myself to work, it's quite lonely, and it's quite, and it reminds me of why I wanted to be a writer, a creative person in the first place. And the reasons for that are sometimes hard to confront.
Mm-hmm. I think that's beautifully put. I mean, what you say about like, you feel like you're at the edge. It does feel that way. And I have felt, there were a couple moments in different productions, or like there was one where I got to opening night and I was like, this is the hardest thing I ever tried to do. And I lived.
But Josh,
I'm not dead, you know,
no, you're not dead. And I think, and you did it with other people, and you couldn't have done it by yourself.
No.
And I think that the experience of, I mean, that's how you grow, you know, not to sound silly, but I think that you're forever changed after that. Even if, when you do things that scare you and you do them anyway, and sometimes it's not even about the outcome. It's just making the commitment to do the hard, scary thing. It's
well, because what you're doing has the potential always to be a huge failure. Josh. You know, like, so you're dipping you're saying yes to that. You're saying, yes, I am willing to risk this being the worst thing that's ever happened in a theater. And, you know, if it's not, then you know,
no, it's so true. And I think that you learn, you know, one thing that's been wonderful about having a background as an actor in theater is, you know, the last play I acted in was Dance Nation at Playwrights Horizons. I think we had
which was amazing, and you were so good in it.
Oh, Josh, thank you so much. And we did a lot of performances. We did 80 something shows of that. And I, you know, have had the experience of doing runs, and that's not even a long run compared to what some actors do, but you know, sometimes you hit it and sometimes you really don't hit it. And you don't hit it when, you know, sometimes you don't hit it when the critics are there. Sometimes you don't hit it when the person you have a crush on is there, when, you know, just when you want to feel good. And it's just learning to live with all of that, learning to live with, it sounds trite, but learning to live with the highs and the lows of it. I mean, to me, it's like, oh, that's the goal. I thought the goal was like the good review, or the person who you're scared of coming up to you afterwards and saying, you're smart, I love you. But I think the goal is like, can I live with it all in my hands and still make work and still be open and still keep other people in mind? Yeah, I might be crying the whole time. I might be crying, but
no, I mean, I think what makes it addictive is that it's always, you never have a perfect performance. Like, there is no performance where every actor hits it. And if they do, that's the performance where some audience member has a coughing fit, you know, or like, so it's always going to never be perfect. And yet there's something beautiful about that.
It needn't be. I think it's funny because when I feel it as an actor, and I felt it as a writer, the performances that felt the most energized to me, that made me feel like, oh, I'm going to have good dreams tonight, were the performances where I was like, oh, we're doing our work. We're doing our work, and that means different things in different productions, but like we all have this fidelity to like truth telling. We're all listening, you know, we're all like keeping in mind the circumstances of the world and this individual moment. And that's when I feel like the roof of the theater starts to pop off a little bit. It's not just because like, oh, they laughed at all my stupid jokes. That helps, but it's you can feel when we're all sort of like committed to working in the hard, difficult way that we've set up. And that's, again, Canute does this, Daniel Auken does this, and I know a lot of directors do. I just haven't had the privilege to work with them yet, but they're not looking for the safe stuff. Like, let's do our work and let's live. Can you do your work and live with what you get? And if you can, then like maybe this is a path for you, you know. Hi, Annie.
Look who it is.
Yeah.
Emily, do you mind? Emily, do you mind?
Just got,
okay.
There you go. Unmuted. Perfect. Hi, you guys. I'm going to pop in. We have some great questions from the audience. So if you don't mind, I was going to ask a few of those.
Please.
So the first question for both of you is, what is your writing process like? Where do you start? And when do you start? And how do you know when you're done? Just an easy one.
Take it away, Josh. Take it away, Josh.
I always have to be puzzling over some question that I don't have an easy answer to, that doesn't feel something that I'm intrigued to be able to look at from multiple angles. And it always starts for me with a character that somehow embodies that question. And then I think about them for a while. I take notes. I have little, scraps of ideas, and then I delay it as long as humanly possible, just so that it has time to marinate. And then, so like with the play like Significant Other, I started working on that in 2011, and we had a production in 2015. So that's like 4 years of marination and workshops and writing and cutting and rewriting. And it's long, it's slow, it's painful. Ebony?
I think I would say ditto. I think that sometimes, and the times I've tried to get an idea and be like, great, oh yeah, I'm gonna write that play about the girl on Cape Cod. I think sometimes when I sit down and write again from that front part of my brain, it kind of dies on the page, even if I can squeeze out pages. I think for me, sometimes I know like Paris started, I just saw like a girl in a parking lot on the ice, and she had just fallen down, like that sort of, and then I was like, oh, well, then I do months of just sort of letting the seemingly disparate threads of thought come together about why a person might be someplace. So, but I think it's a lot of time, it's a lot of trust. And I think that I know I'm onto something when the external world starts to validate my internal thinking. Like I've been thinking about writing this play now that has something to do with a lottery ticket. And over the past 2 weeks, I've had 2 different encounters with things having to do with lottery. And I'm like, yes, the world, of course, the universe is busy.
I believe in that.
And the universe is busy taking care of COVID and like people who need real help. I don't need that help. But like some little pocket of the universe is saying like, oh, keep going. It's there. And so I try to like let the story smoke itself out just enough. And so it takes a while.
That's great. There's a lot of love for both of your work in these questions. And I wanted to just repeat one of them, which is somebody says, I loved Paris to my core, which I think is amazing. And in that question, she said to Ebony, what is it like to write about ordinary people in our society?
Gosh, what is that like? I don't know. I guess I would say, I guess to answer in a different way, I tried writing a play at Juilliard, actually, because we have to write like a billion plays in our 2 years there. I tried writing a play about like people with money, people who lived in New York, and for some reason it couldn't gain traction with me. I think, I don't know, everybody feels kind of ordinary to me. I wrote about people who I felt like, I'd never worked in retail. I did restaurant work for about 20 years, and I felt like I just wanted to write about people I knew. And that is very thrilling to me, to be able to do that, and to hopefully write about people that makes you think like, oh, I know that woman, or I've dated that guy, or I've had that crazy boss. That trying to find characters that feel steeped in some reality, however it comes to me, feels like the sort of primary concern.
That's great. And for you, Josh, there's a question about what's the difference between working with collaborators, as you have for the Bedwetter, and writing a play, obviously, just with yourself.
A huge difference. It's a huge difference.
I mean, we know there's a difference, but talk about what is the difference?
You know, as a playwright, you can have a feeling about something like, this just feels right to me, and so it goes in the play. And you can't just have a feeling when you have two collaborators. You have to be able to articulate why this idea is essential, or why this has to be changed. And it forces you to articulate something in a way that I find rarely I'm forced to do with a play.
But can I ask, Josh, do you think that will help your playwriting? Or I don't know, like, what do you think the relationship is between that collaborative accommodation or work, like in terms of your own individual pursuit when you go back to writing your own stuff?
It's tricky. I think, you know, to go back to what we were saying before about being in the dark and the mystery of it all, like you have to maintain that somehow. But building certainly a musical, even if there's some mystery involved, it's so much more of a machine.
Yeah.
That like you do have to be technical in a way that like with a, you know, the mystery, you get a lot less of it, you know?
Yeah.
What advice do you both have for an emerging writer, a writer who's just starting out, both in terms of finding their own truth and finding good mentors, and any other suggestions you might have?
So the number one thing, and this is Marsha Norman 101, is read a lot of plays. And I think when you're just starting out, you just have to see what resonates with you. You don't even have to intellectually understand why. You just keep reading and say like, wow, this one really touched me. And then you have a little stack as you go. And you're like, okay, what is the through line here of what connects these plays that these are the ones that keep resonating with me, and trying to figure out what then you can, you know, when you know what you love. Because your goal, I think, is always to write something that you as an audience member would desperately love to see.
Yeah.
And so the way you start to do that is by being a great audience member, I think, you know, a great reader.
Yeah, I think I would echo that too. And I think for myself, reading and seeing plays, and also kind of being well read, you know, I read a lot of books and a lot of nonfiction. I don't know. I think trying to be the best writer you can be. That sounds so silly, but I think I'm reminded of, like, I think Al Pacino, when he was like starting out, was like, I'm short, I'm ethnic, like I have to be electrifying. And I think that when I was younger, certainly I was like, how do I get produced? Like, how do I get famous? And those questions are not useless, but I think what served me more was figuring out how to double down on craft and voice, and how to really find stories that I was really posed to tell. And I don't mean autobiographically, but stories that really came from some of the deepest parts of myself. And that as soon as I was like a little scared of telling it, I was like, that's probably what you should be writing about. You know, that finding that writing that can cost you a little something, and finding a way to stay intimate. And again, I don't mean personal, but just having a relationship with yourself as a writer, I think is really useful. And I'll also say, and this was true for my acting, which led to my writing, is finding people who you can work with. Again, like when I was like going to open calls and like trying to find Scott Rudin's email address, like maybe that could have led to something, but I did much better when I like did readings at Club Thumb and found like a family of people, of actors and writers both, who were sort of interested in me, and we all sort of started working together in a more consistent way. But you know, find emails too. Like do all of those things. But I think it's useful to find people who speak your language.
Great.
And actually, and Josh, I'm going to echo something you just said, because you know, I read a lot of Stephen King when I was little, and I was like lonely and a sad kid, and I read a lot of scary stuff. And I feel the most at home as a writer when I read something I've written that reminds me of myself as like a 12-year-old. And I don't write horror, but I mean, like when I'm writing something that reminds me of why story is so important to me, when I've written something that reminds me, or when I've acted in something that reminds me of all that storytelling gave me as a young kid, then I'm like, oh, this is my lane. If I keep working in this rigorous way, someone's going to pay me a few dollars to do it. Maybe.
Mm-hmm. And I would totally echo what Ebony just said. It's like, there's this book called The Art of Fiction by Edith Wharton, but it's actually quite useful for all writers. But she talks about the difference between a good idea and a good idea for you, you know, and talks about this amazing metaphor of like, you could be sitting on a gold mine, but if you don't have the right tools to dig down and get it, then you're just sitting on a gold mine, you know. How are you uniquely positioned to tell a story? Or, you know, what Marcia sometimes says, like, what are the plays that if you don't write them, they will never exist in the universe?
Yeah. And I think when I started thinking about it that way, I mean, I'm about to turn 40. I met Neil.
You are not.
Theater. I am. I'm going to be 40 in a few weeks. I met Neil when I was 18 years old. So I've been trying, and like most of my acting work has been over the past 6 years. So I say this to people because, you know, sometimes you hear people who are working talk and they're like, just do what you know, and they make it seem so easy. But like, I've been trying to bang on the door of like work for like almost 20 years, and, you know, fits and starts, and there've been ebbs and flows. But I say that to say, like, it took me a really long time to do what Josh is talking about, which is get really specific about myself as an actor and a writer. And once I understood myself as it sounds so overblown, but like once I understood myself as an artist or an instrument in a certain way, there was so much freedom within those boundaries. And it was all internal. I wasn't looking to other people to make me feel like I belonged. And I don't know, it just made me, I began to work. So I think there's some relationship to self-awareness and that pursuit.
You guys are amazing. I really do feel like, thank you, first of all, for not saying no. You easily could have both said that sentence, that is no, and I'm grateful. You know, there are a lot of demands on your time and your brain and your heart. So thank you both for coming, and also just the honesty. I mean, as evidenced by that last comment of an actor revealing her age. When I was told how old Ebony was for Cider House Rules, I said, you're wrong. There's no way, because I couldn't believe it. But your honesty and good nature is just what makes us all love you. And in addition, you're really good playwrights. And I cannot wait to work with you, Josh. And I cannot wait to work with you again, Ebony. So thank you. And thank you all for joining us. I'll flip it over to Claire to wrap up, but
I have the biggest talent crush on the two of you. And I just need you to know that there were like dozens of questions and comments in here about your grace, your humility, the two of you have the kindest heart. And also, I just need to say, I feel so lucky that the two of you are sort of bookending this pandemic experience for Atlantic, that we went out on Ebony and that we will enter back on Josh and co. Like, how lucky, Annie, are we? It's so cool. And I'm so moved by what you shared. Truly, it was such an honor to just listen to the two of you riff. And to all of you watching, I just know you feel the same, because these two are exquisite and so smart. So thank you so much. Josh, noted for the press. I will, as a marketer, putting that in my brain. I will be very gracious. I promise.
Maybe I'll get over it. I'm working on it.
Listen, I get it. It's also, it's your life. I get it, you know? Yeah, thanks everybody for tuning in.
And
Annie,
there's
go ahead.
a link in the chat, right? I was
Thank
just
you.
going to say,
Yeah.
yeah,
There's a link in the
there's
chat.
a link in the chat. If you feel the desire to make a donation, we would be grateful again.
Yeah, and we've got these every Friday through the rest of the month, plus a bonus Monday. Next week, we have a conversation with one of our ensemble members who you may know from the screen, Giancarlo Esposito. He's got an amazing career, and Neil will be chatting with him. We're really excited. And again, thank you all so very much. Be safe, be kind, have a wonderful weekend. Bye, everybody.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.